Hello, everyone, and welcome to Marvel-ous Movie Mondays. That's a tongue twister, if I do say so myself. I'm joined by my co-host, Kelsey. Kelsey, what's up? How's it going? How's it hanging?
Hi. It's going great. Yeah, it's going really good, Dill. How are you?
Yeah, I'm great. I'm feeling incredible, if you will,
Oh,
because I
yes.
think this is the first time, unless we're counting the Mark Ruffalo movie club or She-Hulk, that we've podcasted about Hulk. And everyone
Right.
knows Hulk is my favorite Avenger,
Yes,
and
he is.
I am so excited to talk about the Incredible Hulk today. As part of our, what are we calling it, Kels? Our little mini series.
Oh, this is the second part of the first Avenger Files
That's
where
right.
we
I
take
knew
a
the
look
answer. It's just
back.
yeah, I was
I
throwing it over to
know.
you. Yeah. It wasn't
I
like I
know
was like, what
because
is it called again? I didn't want you
no,
to
I
think I was
know.
disrespecting your idea by forgetting what it was called. It was more so a segue to set it up for you.
No, you know that I like to say it because
Yes, yes.
I like it.
There we go. So we're going back in time, basically, to the 70s and 80s, where these TV movies were coming out as these backdoor pilots for the series that would emerge out of it. Last week we did Spider-Man 77, which was a unique experience. This week we're covering The Incredible Hulk and The Return of the Incredible Hulk, which were two movies that served as pilots for that series. That series did get picked up and was very, very successful, made household names out of Bill Bixby and Lou Ferrigno, which we'll talk about in a sec. But Kelsey, do you have any news to get to before we begin, or do you want to just jump right in?
Well, as we discussed before we started filming, that the season 2 of I Am Groot just dropped on Disney Plus,
Which we didn't even know was a thing. Which I
which
guess
I
because
didn't
of the
even
strikes,
know.
it's like I guess they can't have Vin Diesel really talk about it, even though I don't think he would anyway. And
Right.
maybe, yeah, I don't know. It dropped though, so it's a new Marvel series, so we're gonna talk about it next week, not
Yeah.
now. But
As far as I knew, the next thing that we were getting was Loki season 2. So this was just like really random and unexpected.
yeah, the next thing we're actually getting, I think, is the Marvels, right? Or no, is Loki before that? I
Well,
don't
I
know.
think the Marvels is in November, isn't it? November
Yeah,
like
is Loki
11th or
earlier than
something.
that? I don't remember.
Loki is October 6th.
Ooh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Cool, cool,
So we're
cool.
like we're like less than a month out from getting Loki season 2, which
Oh, look
is
at that.
super exciting.
Yeah, but apparently there's a new Marvel series out there that we got to cover, so we're gonna cover it next week in its entirety. It's only 5 shorts, and we'll also kind of give like a little bit of a news update, just kind of talk about some stuff that's been swirling around, just in the Marvel sphere. But anyway, why don't we get to it though? I mean, this is so exciting. My first ever Hulk exclusive podcast. So Kelsey, you know what I'm gonna do?
What? Hulk out? Oh,
Yeah, I have to because
cool.
it's my favorite Avenger, and how many more times we're gonna get to cover this? We're actually gonna cover it at least 2 more times, but you know what I'm saying. There we go. Green names as well. This
Wow.
is it. I'm so excited, Kels, and I'll be honest, I'm not just excited because it's Hulk. I'm excited because it's the Hulk series. And I think it is one of the best of the Marvel throwback series, at least in my opinion. And I think these two movies are incredible, and I can't wait to talk about them. I mean, it's got it in the name, The Incredible Hulk. Kelsey may feel differently. We'll see. But I would love to hear, Kelsey, your blanket just based thoughts, unless you want to just dive into synopses first. Whatever you want to do, Kelsey. I'm just going to be here along for
Sure.
the ride, beaming like a little schoolboy because I'm so excited to
Okay,
talk about the
Dill.
Hulk.
I'm excited for you. I am excited to talk about the Hulk because we really haven't gotten like you've been saying, we haven't gotten a good opportunity to do so. I'm to theme as well over here. I did specifically take my notes in green for the
Nice.
Hulk.
Nice.
Um so I think let's just jump right in. We'll talk about some we'll talk about the events that occurred, some
Mhm.
major plot points that happen
Yeah.
because most people aren't watching these. It's not like the
Yeah.
movies that we can all watch on Disney Plus. It's
Right.
like we
And I will
bought
say
these
this one
for a
this one's a
dollar.
little bit more accessible in terms of like you can get good quality versions of them. Like the Spider-Man
Yeah.
one, it was hard to find. Well, I mean, it was not hard to find, but it was hard to find like an actual digital download of it. We had to find a
Right.
YouTube version. This one, like all the episodes are on Apple, and I think it's because it was such a success. Like a lot of our parents, our grandparents, like they grew up with, or not grew up with. Our parents might have, our grandparents may have been older, but you know what I mean. Like our older generations, like this was a pretty big popular show. I know, especially for Marvel fans, because it was pretty loyal to just the overall concept of the Hulk. And we'll get to that in a sec too. But like,
I just
this
dropped
is
my phone.
it's okay. Go get it. Yeah. So it's a wow. Blanket's yellow, not green. Disappointed. So I'm kidding. Is that a towel or blanket? I don't care.
It's a blanket.
Yeah, but it's not green, so I don't care.
Oh my god.
Whoa. Wow, you're really Hulk
Sorry.
just smashed
Okay.
your computer on the ground.
We're a mess. Hold on.
It's okay. Why don't I talk while Kelsey resituates and reconnects? This is a first.
Okay.
No, but it's I think one of the most well respected of these Marvel series. It's definitely the one that has had the best legacy. So much so that we'll talk about it. But She-Hulk and a lot of the marketing literally had marketing to throw back to the style, like the kind of shot in the theme song where like Bruce is like standing on the steps and is like, "You won't like me when I'm angry" or something like that. Or sorry, not Bruce, David. But standing on the
Yeah.
steps, like, "You won't like me when I'm angry." Like, they literally mirror that shot in the trailer for She-Hulk. Watching back, so like, it's cool to see that like its influence has definitely stuck
Yeah.
around. Lou Ferrigno, obviously such a famous name, but it's like because of the show, and I do think the show is, of all the shows and TV series, I think this is like the most popular one. So so hopefully we'll get more viewers on this one and listeners, because I think this is a fun series to go back to, and we will go back to this at least 2 more times because there are 2 more movies along this path. But yeah, Kelsey, take it away.
So, sorry. Before we started, I realized that my Beats had very low battery, and I wanted to make sure that they survived. You know, usually we talk for about an hour, so I'm connected. I've plugged them in, so they're charging as we
That's
talk.
why.
So when I moved my head, it brought my whole computer down. So I'm so
Gotcha.
sorry for that. But
It's okay.
let's jump right into the Incredible Hulk released. It aired. We're talking about the pilot, which aired on November 4th, 1977. It was directed by Kenneth Johnson, also written by Kenneth Johnson. And so here's my quick summary for that.
Kenneth Johnson, the creator of the show itself. Yeah, just
yes.
Put it out there.
When scientist Dr. David Bruce Banner exposes himself to entirely too much gamma radiation, he finds that he can access a considerable amount of strength, but needs to transform into a mindless green monster to do it.
There you go.
So basically, we start this series off, we get like a happy little montage of a husband and wife, you know, this being David and his wife, who I don't know if we ever find out her name.
But it's mentioned at some point, but very quickly, like it's in passing. Yeah.
So, well, she doesn't stick around for long, Dill, so it doesn't, her name isn't really relevant. Because
it's not said in the beginning. It's said later on when it's like, this happened to me, but I lost, I think maybe Lisa's the name. I lost Lisa. Lisa's no longer here. Her son is here. Like, he says it there, like very quickly.
Right. So we find out that in this little montage that actually Lisa passed away when her and David had gotten into a car accident. We see him specifically trying to lift this car because, you know, it like, they fly off the road, it tumbles down a hill, it lands upside down, and he's trying to lift it, trying to get her out, and he's unable to save her. He doesn't quite reach the strength he needs. So we find out that him and his colleague, Dr. Elena Marks, research, you know, this kind of inhuman strength people get whenever they're in a stressful situation, their adrenaline's going, it's a fight or flight kind of situation. It's like
Laura, not Lisa. I was so close.
You were so close.
I went back and looked at the subtitles to see what it was. I watched back the scene. It's Laura, not Lisa. I just lost a 5-point trivia match right there.
Yeah, you just lost
when we inevitably add these to the trivia league.
Yeah. And so they're researching what causes people to kind of get this like unbelievable amount of strength. So they're interviewing all these different people with all these different scenarios. You know, the first people that we meet is a woman named Mrs. Mayer, son BJ, and she's talking about how she was basically in a very similar car accident to the one David was in, but she was actually able to lift the car. You know, that kind of happens with like mothers and like women who have children. They like get this strength when they're like children are in danger because, you know, it's like this huge adrenaline rush like kicks in, and it's like basically what happens when you go through childbirth. It's crazy.
Right. Except 110-pound woman lifting a 1,200-pound car is still a little bit of a stretch.
That's pretty incredible.
But I will say, I incredible. Haha. How many times are we going to say that?
Oh,
No, but
jeez.
I really like this kind of inciting setup, like being that like
Mhm.
all these people are like having this like kind of superhuman strength, but it has nothing to do with like sort of powers. It's just kind of like something with their DNA. Like I love the
Mhm.
scientific angle of the show, and I think that's one of the things I most appreciated about like this opening pilot was just how much into the science it was. It almost kind of reminded me of anything like a Grey's Anatomy episode because it was a lot about like let's
Mhm.
look at the charts, let's look at the DNA, let's look and examine what's wrong. I was like, wow, this like feels like a Grey's episode. It's just it has superhero elements to it, which I
Yeah.
really like. And I will say, what's her name? The actress who played Mrs. Mayor, Susan Batson, is so good in this one scene, like so amazing.
Dill, I was just gonna say the same thing. I
Yeah,
literally wrote down in my notes. She is acting her heart out.
yeah. I mean, all of these
She's so
actors.
good.
Yeah, we'll talk about Bill Baxby as well, and even Susan Sullivan, who plays Elena Marks. But like, I think all the
Yeah.
acting in the show is consistently really good around the board. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, yeah, it's definitely taken a more mature leap than
Hmm.
than the Spider-Man, than the
Yeah.
Amazing
Well,
Spider-Man
yeah, because
TV
also
movie.
Spider-Man, it's like he's a youthful spirit. You know, he in some
Mhm.
versions he's a high schooler, so like there's kind of this whimsical sense of adventure. Whereas Hulk, I feel like has always dealt with like kind of the alone, like kind of lonely aspects. I mean, we look at the MCU, a lot of it deals with how he can't get close to anyone romantically because he can Hulk out. It's like
Mhm.
this rage monster inside of him, and I think we kind of get that here too. He's lonely. I mean, his wife dies in a car accident. We see what happens at the end of this film with someone else who's close to him. You know, like he is
Mhm.
someone who, because of his just the way he is, he's already a loner. Then he has these powers on top of it that he gets that like makes him even more of an outcast because now society fears him and hates him and ostracizes him, and he himself can't even connect to his other person to where he feels so alone when he snaps back out of these things. Like it's a very lonely character and it's a very sad character. And the main theme for this series, that like kind of slow piano ballad music that they use in every credit sequence for the series, is very sad and very dreary. It's like that funeral like piano tune. And I'm like, this is a very unconventional theme song for a movie, for a superhero movie. You know, it's like it's not like your modern day Avengers dun 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 dun. It's not. It's like this slow like piano do 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 do, like
Yeah,
very
yeah,
very
yeah.
sad and somber. I'm like,
Yeah.
wow. I mean, it's like a pretty bold move, especially for like a show that is trying to appeal, I guess, to all ages, but like has a
Mhm.
more mature tint to it, but still is a superhero film through and through. So it's like that's what's
Yeah.
very interesting is just how they take on like the kind of more mature, but also kind of like sad and darker approach to it. Yeah, it's definitely much more mature than the Spider-Man one, which I like.
Yeah. Yeah. So basically we find out that the reason for their experiments and their research and everything is basically because David wants to know why he couldn't access the same amount of strength that all these other
Hmm.
people could. You know, we hear the story about the other woman who is able to like bend a pipe when she was in trouble. And he wants to know like why it didn't happen for him, why he couldn't save his wife. So basically they realize that all of the people during the time of their incidents were exposed to a certain level of gamma radiation and he wasn't. And so his solution to this is, oh, well, I'm just going to crank this dial to max
Hmm.
capacity, sit in this space. It's like literally like this MRI machine that he's like sitting upright in. He has this, his face is like tucked into this like mask thing to hold him in place. And he's getting like rotated and there's a green light shining on him. And I guess that's supposed to represent the gamma radiation. And it's just like, it's so, first of all, it's a very long scene to
Yeah,
watch him undergo this gamma radiation treatment. But also, it's just like kind of silly because it
it
goes on for
is.
so long and he's just sitting there like this.
Yeah. But it's also like I appreciate how like I feel like in a lot of superhero origins it's like almost like accidental, like, oh, I got bit by this spider, what do I do?
Mm.
Or I fell into
Hmm.
this cave or whatever. But
Yeah.
here it's like he's doing it consciously. He's so motivated by his own ego and grief because it's like partially
Yeah.
like ego, like, oh, I can fix this, I can make myself like whatever, I'm the best scientist who ever lived. But part of it is also I am literally like aching and in pain over this loss, and why was I the only one who wasn't able to stop this? And I'm pissed
Mhm.
off about it. So it's like, and that's where the anger slips in too, because it's like Bruce Banner, I think that, or David Banner in this case, but it's like the whole thing is like you got to understand why he gets angry because you have to get angry to be the Hulk. It's not just like when he gets pushed or hits that something goes off. Like the whole line is, "You don't like me when I'm angry." So we got to establish
Mhm.
that there's some sort of anger there. But I like how
Yeah.
it's not like he's this rage monster either. It's more so like he just has so much pent up guilt about his wife that it just pisses him off more so about himself. He's more pissed off about himself and what he couldn't do because of his own ego than it is he's pissed off about another person or something. And I think that's a really interesting character device to kind of
Mhm.
introduce us to this character to show he's got an ego, but it's kind of, it's justified why he has these like fits where he's just pissed off. And I like that. I like that kind of bridge of loneliness and pissed off as this character. I think it works really
Yeah.
well in establishing who this is because this is also an older, superhero. Like he's clearly a
Mhm.
little older than your typical traditional leading man, um,
Mhm.
which is another thing that I think makes it unique. But yeah, it is a silly sequence though. I agree. It's
Speaking of the Hulk, so we get our first transformation sequence. We get our first Hulkening, if you will. And it's when he's driving home. It's a rainy night. There's some shrapnel in the road. He drives over. He ends up getting a flat tire. He has to get out of his car in the rain to fix it. Things aren't going right for him. Like removing the tire, it's just too taxing for him. He's trying to undo the bolts and he just can't do it. He freaks out. He gets angry, as you've been saying, Dill, and we get our first transformation. The first sign of him transforming is in the eyes. He's
Mhm.
got these bright, whitish, a little like green contacts in, which I found so jarring and
Yeah,
interesting.
it's
Um,
cool though. I like it.
and slowly but surely we see like his shirt starts ripping, his muscles are coming out, his like sleeves start ripping, the pants start ripping, and he becomes big and hulking, if you
Yeah.
will.
I gotta just say it. I really have enjoyed between this and Spider-Man seeing how the '70s deals with the special effects and
Yes.
the lack thereof. Like I love how like they kind of said, you know what, we can't show anything with CGI because that's not even a concept at that time. It's like let's
Mhm.
just kind of do it practically. Let's like cut back and forth between him and Lou Ferrigno, and then like put
Mhm.
Lou Ferrigno in the small clothes, have him rip him open. Like I like that. Like you're not putting all this makeup on this regular guy. Instead, you're gonna have another actor cast as a whole. We'll talk about Lou Ferrigno in a sec, but like I
Mhm.
love just the kind of transformation and how they play around with the different filmmaking techniques to kind of mask the fact that they don't have the technology to do that. Which I really
Yeah,
like.
Dill, I said the same thing. I literally wrote down love the practical effects, and it almost makes me wish that the movies that we have today, as great as like CGI and special effects and visual effects are, I it almost makes me wish that they didn't that almost like as technology advanced, we just got better at doing the practical effects instead of
Right.
switching over right to computer generated
Well,
stuff. I just wish, like, because with the shirt ripping, especially, it's like we don't see that kind of stuff in movies anymore. Like, if
no.
someone's changing into their, superhero outfit these days, it's completely CGI. Like, no
Especially
part
the
of it
metal
is
ones like
real.
Iron Man and
Yeah.
like the Iron Spider. It's like you press a
Yeah.
button and it all just kind of forms around you. That's to me that's not exciting. I like when it's
Yeah.
even the old Iron Man when he's like putting on each arm. Like that to me is
Hmm.
exciting because it's like the whole fun about the superhero thing is you get to suit up, you get to put on this costume.
Yeah.
That's what I always liked about the Raimi Spider-Man movies too. Is like when he was in battle, the costumes would rip and he would have
Hmm.
like half of the face open. Like I like that stuff
Yeah.
in the Raimi movies. But it's very interesting here. I like the practical effects here as well. I just I think that's why Guardians 3 was so good too, is because like James Gunn was like, I don't want to make all these CGI animals. Let's just have them all be makeup. And like they're all
Yeah.
prosthetic animals. And those animal
Yeah.
people on that planet look really cool. And like they of course need CGI when you make the baby animals and stuff, like the real animals, like the baby rocket and stuff. That's all CG.
Hmm.
But it's like if you can do it practically, do it practically. All the gold people, the sovereign, are just made up. It's like
Yeah.
they have makeup on, and you don't
Mhm.
need CGI for that. Other directors may have used CGI for that, and that's kind of sad.
Yeah.
It's like we don't have to, so why would we? And that's where I think James Gunn is going to be such a good help for DC because I think it's going to have kind of that unique quality to it. So
Yeah. And this is kind of the first time where we see this version of Hulk kind of really go out of control because
mm,
once the transformation happens, he starts wrecking his car. He throws it off the road. I'm like, "What? Why are you wrecking your car? You're going to need that eventually." And
mm,
then he just wanders off into the night. Seemingly it's the next morning. He stumbles upon a young girl who's fishing at this lake. He, gives a hand. He's never violent You know, he has more control over, I think, any other version of Hulk that we've seen, Edward Norton's or Mark Ruffalo's. He's still kind of like this mindless, almost like this really young and like uneducated kind of brain where he can't really formulate words or understand anyone really, but he's never violent. Like he never just sees a random pedestrian and wants to freak out and kill them. So he sees this girl and his first instinct is to like help her up off the ground. Obviously, when there's a horrifying green monster behind you, you start screaming and panicking. She, you know, sails off onto the lake. She ends up falling out of the boat, drowning. His response to this is to rip a tree out of the earth and kind of like use it as a way for her to like grab on so he can save her. But you know, she's freaking out. She calls for her dad. Her dad has a gun, starts shooting at the Hulk. And this is when he kind of gets angry because now he feels threatened. So now this is when he kind of attacks the dad a little bit, ends up throwing him into the lake and, you know, wanders off into the woods. Eventually he changes back to David and he's like, oh my God, like what happened to me? What did I do? And the first thing he does is go to the lab to tell Elena what happened to him. He's like, I changed into a monster. This is crazy. So now comes the sequence of them trying to figure out how to reverse this, you know, how to bring him back to normal. But he starts thinking about the death of his wife. Obviously, that's the catalyst that, you know, makes him angry to his core. So he hulks out in the machine that they're trying to use to, you know, change him back, and he ends up destroying it. But, you know, he breaks out of it. And Elena is like very, you know, calming with him and is trying to help him. She's like, your hands are hurt. Like, let me help you. And still he's able to like really rein it in and kind of almost reason with her, but not in a way that you can tell he doesn't fully understand what's going on, you know?
Yeah.
So it's just interesting.
Yeah, I wanted to say one thing about the little girl scene because I think this is such great imagery to the old Mary Shelley Frankenstein, the 1931 movie. There's a scene, this beautiful scene where where Frankenstein's monster kind of stumbles upon this little girl throwing flowers into the lake, and he gets excited and he starts throwing flowers with her. She like makes this friend with this big giant green monster, and then just because he's this big giant monster doesn't know any better, he like throws the girl into the lake. And it's a very sad, like it's almost like one of those tragic things where the character doesn't know better, and this young girl, I believe she dies, and it's like kind of this whole thing about innocence, and like the character didn't know he was killing this girl, but he's like, oh, I don't have any more flowers, what can I throw? I'll throw you into the lake, and throws her in the lake. I think this was a great parallel to that, because it's like it's that idea of the Hulk like not really being this like bad thing, or this, you know, he's obviously a vengeful monster when he needs to be, but it's like kind of that innocence. And I think there's a real parallel to the fact that he's a big green hulking monster, and Frankenstein's monster is also a big green hulking monster. And I think that's kind of like what this kind of took inspiration from. Obviously they didn't go as dark a route as to having him actually like accidentally killing her like the Frankenstein one does, because I think that'd be a little too morbid. And then of course when they did Young Frankenstein, they did a joke on this where like he starts playing on a seesaw with her, and he sits on the seesaw and she goes flying, but instead of dying and falling into the water, she like lands in her bed safe and sound. It's like this whole gag, but like it's kind of like that. It's the idea of the innocence, and it's like, well, is he to blame, or is it just kind of society to blame for jumping to conclusions that this big monster? And that's why we get this villain character who's really not really a villain, and we're gonna see him soon when he like shows up at her apartment being like, oh, do you have a second to talk? Oh, I see you're busy. Like he's the villain of the story because he's doing his job. He's a reporter who's like, there's this big monster, we must track him and hunt him down, he's a menace to society. But it's like, is he? And that's what makes him a villain, is it's because he's really not. And it's like, you know, but to everyone else, they wouldn't see him as a villain for simply reporting and wanting to hunt down this monster, you know, but we, the context of the viewers. So I think it's just a very interesting device in like literature and film, like that idea of kind of the innocent monster being almost like a child yet to learn the way of the world. And I think that was such an interesting parallel. Like literally as soon as I saw her sitting by the lake, I'm like, are they about to do the Frankenstein thing? Is he about to kill her like by accident after playing with her? But then they jump to the whole like, oh, we got to kill him, like all this stuff. So, but it's very similar. I mean, this is very much like Frankenstein, you know, kind of the innocent monster who doesn't know better, doesn't understand his strength, That's something we see in what's the other one, Of Mice and Men too, when Lenny
With
kills
Lenny,
that
yeah.
girl by accident. Like it's that whole repeated idea.
Yeah, you know what he kind of reminds me of, Till? I
Shrek.
forget which.
I'm kidding.
How did you know I was going to bring up Shrek?
Wait, were you really?
Yeah, because I
Oh,
was wait, not Shrek, like not just because he's green like
well,
Shrek,
that was the
but
joke. I didn't know you were actually
which
gonna.
no, I'm gonna talk about Shrek though, which is
Oh,
weird that you said that.
okay.
I don't remember which Shrek it was, if it's Shrek 2 or like Shrek Far, Far Away or whichever one it is. But that whichever Shrek where they have to make the big version of Gingy and his name's like
That's two.
Mongo or
Mongo.
something.
Yes, and he doesn't know better. Yeah,
And he
yes,
doesn't know better, and he, like, rips, like, the big cup off of, like, the fake Starbucks, like, the
You're right.
whatever the Far, Far Away coffee
Mongo,
is, whatever, and they're just like he's like, "Oh," and then they're like, "Follow the pretty pony," and he's like, "Oh," and it, like, reminds me of that character
That is so funny
from
that we
Shrek
both
2.
got to Shrek, but in two completely different ways.
That's weird. You were like,
that is
"Shrek?"
one
And
of
I
the
was like,
saddest. That is one of the saddest animated movie deaths. That's so
Yeah.
sad when he like falls in the water
Yeah.
because he's looking at the bright fireworks and he's like, ooh,
Yeah.
and he falls. Oh, it's
No.
so sad.
Ugh, let's not even go there.
Gumdrop buttons being literal bombs. I can't. That movie is so fucking good, and like
Yeah.
I think it's genuinely good too. It's not like one of those things where I was 6 at the time and I appreciate it. Like I think it's genuinely a freaking masterpiece. I want to cover those movies on here. Are there any Marvel tie-ins? Maybe not. But we gotta
Maybe
get there somehow.
I'd have to look
Like
into
for
it.
an Avengers movie club, like we don't have Antonio Banderas yet. We don't have Eddie Murphy. No Cameron Diaz. We'll get there though. There's got to be someone, right?
Well, I'll look into it.
We'll
We'll
brainstorm.
see.
Yeah.
We'll try to tie Shrek into this channel.
I think we should just
some
do a
way,
Shrek draft
somehow.
day someday. Maybe like February, March. To celebrate, I was thinking February because like Valentine's Day and it's the most romantic film ever made, or March because March St. Patrick's Day, green. Maybe we do like a green characters draft, like Shrek, Frankenstein, the Hulk.
Ooh,
I don't know.
I love it.
This is the only
Just
three I
let
can
me
think of,
know.
but like, yeah.
What
The
about
Ninja
like a
Turtles.
leprechaun?
Yeah.
Oh, the Ninja Turtles,
Lucky the Leprechaun.
the green
Rex from Toy
M&M.
Story. We're tipping too many picks. All right,
Okay,
we'll save it for draft.
you're right. So basically what we learned from this is that Elena's trying to convince David that like everything's going to be fine because like listen, she's like even when you were that creature whatever, like it's never going to kill anyone because you won't ever kill anyone because at its core it is you. So, she's just trying to convince him that it's not as bad as he thinks it is. And so then a policeman shows up while they're at the lab and he's like, "Hey, so we found your car wrecked on the side of the road. Like, want to tell me about that?" And he's like, "Oh, well, I don't really have a great explanation for this." And this is when we meet the reporter, Mr. McGee.
Mr. McGee. Such a
who
classic,
has-
like
Yeah.
TV 70s. Mr.
Jack
McGee.
McGee.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then he has the big like footprint and he's like, "Oh, does your friend wear like size freaking 28 shoe? Like whatever it is." I don't even know if that's a big size for men. I don't know how men's shoe sizes work.
I
Is
don't
28
know.
big?
Yes.
Okay,
I'm a
cool.
12.
So then my joke worked.
So yeah.
Okay, cool. I'm a 6.5, so if anyone was curious.
I don't know
Yep,
if that's
well,
big
see,
or small. I don't know.
now you know how I feel. It's small. I feel like most women are usually 7.5. I feel like
Gotcha.
that's
I
the
don't think she's
average for
listening to this,
women.
but one of my managers at work, literally one day, one of the bartenders was like, "I bought these shoes. They're way too small for me, and you're the only person I could think of that could fit into them." And our manager's like this tiny little firecracker. So she like comes over and she's like, "I'll try them out." And she like puts the feet in. They were the literal doll shoes, like literally like designed for American Girl dolls. Like I couldn't believe her feet, and they fit right in. I was like,
Wow.
how the hell? I was like, this is at least 5 times smaller than my foot. I was like, there's no way this is an actual human being's foot fitting into an actual shoe. She's like, it's a little snug. I'm like, you think? But like,
Wow.
she fit. I was like, wow, good for you.
Some people have small feet. The Hulk isn't one of them.
No, not at all.
And so he's kind of suspicious of what David and Elena got going on. He thinks that they know more about this creature than they're letting on. So he kind of sneaks into their lab. He sees the destruction that went on and he knocks over like a bottle of some clear liquid that ends up, destroying the place. So Elena stays in the lab to like take care of something. And this is when we get the iconic line you were talking about, Dill, when, Mr. McGee is talking to David, and he's standing on the steps outside the lab, and David says, "Don't make me angry. You wouldn't like me when I'm angry."
Mhm.
And then the lab ends up exploding,
Yeah.
and Elena unfortunately passes away.
Yeah. It
And
is a shocker. I couldn't believe, because honestly,
yeah,
I had seen episodes here and there as a kid,
yeah,
just because there were reruns on TV. But I forgot when I was watching this. I was like, oh, so this is the main woman in the series, right? Like, this is going to be like a love story, whatever. But it's
hmm,
not. It's one of those like shocking moments where I'm like, wow, like
yeah,
that's a bold risk for a pilot to pull off. Maybe it's because they didn't know if they would get picked up for a TV series,
mm,
because these were two, movies released as pilots first,
yeah,
or as movies first before they were pilots. But it's like, wow, like it was a big risk, and I don't think you see that in most modern movies or TV. Because like movies, it's like we want franchises. Like we're not going to kill off the main love interest in the first film. I can't even think of a time when that happened. Like the closest thing is
yeah,
Cap and Peggy in First Avenger, and even then he doesn't die; he
right,
just gets sent into the future. Like I really don't know the last time something like this has happened, and
yeah,
I think it's a bold risk, and I honestly really appreciate it, because especially because I think she did such a good job. That scene where they're in the lab together and she's just trying to like
hmm,
calm him down, talk him out, like those two, I think just have such a good grasp on those characters, that relationship. It feels fleshed out, and we barely even knew them for more than an hour and a half. She did a great
right,
job, but that scene, I was like genuinely shocked.
yeah. Yeah, it definitely was shocking, especially when you think about how this is the pitch for the television show. So now you're pitching it with this character that you've just gotten to know for an hour and
Mm,
30 minutes, but then the rest of the series isn't going to have her cuz she
right.
dies. Like
Well,
she's the big death.
yeah, but
You
it's
know what I
also
mean?
it kind of plays into the theme of like he went through all this because he couldn't save his wife, and even now with his strength, he still can't save the people he loves. I think that's a
Mm,
kind of really sad
sure.
poetry there, and I think that's
Right.
also kind of what aids into the rest of the series, because he is this person who longs to help others, but is just so unlucky in life and so lonely in life. And we see that play out in the next movie. This
Mhm.
idea of trying to help someone, but because you're trying to help someone, you become even more of an enemy of someone else, and it's like that idea where you can't really win in this world, and it's sad. It's a very sad reality, and I think that's kind of why they went the route they did with this ending, is to show that like even now with his strength, he still loses the people he loves, and it's sad,
Right.
and I think that's really really awful. But that's what makes it so good. I think it's like such an
Mm.
interesting show, and I'm like, what bold risks and bold swings to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And so we find out that basically the episode ends with David faking his own death in the
Mhm.
explosion because he decides that, he needs to really get a hold on this transforming into a big monster thing before he kind of, lets himself back into like a functioning society because he doesn't want to hurt any more people. And and that's where the episode ends.
Yeah,
And
and we end with that really slow piano music too. It's like a
yes.
very downer ending. There's a little bit
Hmm.
of optimism of like now he's gonna live his free life and be free of this, but we know there's a whole series coming. He's obviously gonna be in a run-in with this detective, like there's gonna
Right.
be more stuff down the line. But what were your overall thoughts though on this first episode? And we can talk a little bit more. I definitely want to talk about Lou Ferrigno, but I feel like we can bring
Yeah.
that up later because he does a lot more in the next episode.
Hmm.
But what are your thoughts on just this overall pilot or movie?
Dill, I'm disappointed to tell you that I didn't love it.
Okay.
I just didn't find it as exciting and engaging, I guess, as The Amazing Spider-Man. I thought that
Mhm.
that one was a little bit more entertaining and
Okay.
maybe had like a little bit more, I don't know, I pizzazz to it maybe
Yeah, it
is
had
what I'm trying to
it had
say.
more energy for sure, but yeah,
Yes.
I kind of
Um
appreciated this because it didn't, because it almost kind of had this like kind of sad overtone to it that I like. I
sure.
guess it's because we don't see that a lot in movies anymore, in
Mhm.
superhero movies anymore. There's
Sure.
always a rousing sense of adventure, and we didn't get any of that here. Where I'm like,
Yeah.
kind of appreciate it. It's a bold, interesting take, because especially because the next
Yeah.
movie we'll get a little bit more of like the fun, like beating up a
Yes.
bear, which we'll
Oh
get
my
to.
god.
But like that's why I think this one, it was like a very interesting, especially for a pilot. I was like, it's just such a bold, big swing that I have to appreciate it. But I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying.
Yeah, I feel like it's one of those choices that you either deeply appreciate it and you appreciate, how different it is and how unique it is for this genre, or you just kind of look at it as kind of like a swing and a miss. And I think that's kind of where I'm leading more. I
Mhm.
My problem for me is that I just didn't think that this is going to sound weird, but I didn't think that the stakes were high enough in a weird way. Like it didn't, like obviously like his, him having this internal battle is trying to like get a rein in on like being the Hulk and trying to fix this is basically the main conflict of this story. But I just didn't think that there was enough external conflicts around it, because we start the episode knowing that his wife is already dead. And I feel like had the episode gone in a different way, where maybe, the big, the main person he's trying to save throughout the episode is the wife, or like that scene doesn't come until the end and he's somehow unable to access the strength and we end up losing her, I feel like that would have meant more to me than losing the character that I really liked, which was Elena. And I thought that it was interesting to make him lose not one, but two people. And kind of and he basically kind of starts the episode the same way that he ends it, which is not being able to save either of them. And you said, you took that as like a positive, interesting aspect, where I'm kind of just left feeling like, okay, so where do we go from here now, kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, it very much is a pilot where I think it's like kind of just setting the ground for more to happen. And I think that's what we see in the next episode too, is it like kind of takes the premise and rolls with it. Okay, now he's like separated from the lab and from his home. Now what? Now how does he navigate being kind of alone on his own, trying to save things, but also still be sciencey as well. I think I also appreciated the science aspect of it too. It was much more science oriented than I originally thought. I thought it was very funny how they like have the dial where he like does the gamma and it's like obviously taped over or whatever because they don't know how high it goes. And he's like, it must only be this much. And he's talking to her and she's like, no, it's like 3 million. He's like, what? Like, that was very funny to me. And that's another thing too. It's like it didn't have a ton of humor, but it had like a joke or two to where I was like, okay, like I get it. And the camp of the Hulk himself too. It like kind of feels like a throwback all at once, but it still feels like mature for its time. I don't know. I did really like it, but I get what you're saying. I think it's also because I just love the whole concept of the Hulk and the character of the Hulk. I love that kind of like really poetic nature of like being alone and the loneliness aspect while still being the strongest. You have everything but you have nothing all at once type thing. Eeyore's my favorite Winnie the Pooh character, so say with that what you will. I guess I'm just drawn to like the sad depressing fucks, but it's just like it's I think it makes for very interesting character studies. And for me it's like I feel like it's interesting when we talk about these movies. I feel like you're very much into like plot and like relationships and stuff, where I'm more into like the tones and vibes and like character, which is very interesting. It's like two different minded people, but like like I was so digging this thing. Like this was awesome to me. But again, that's where we vary. But I'd love to hear your thoughts though on the second one, to see if you like it more or less, because now we kind of get more into like the whole, okay, now it's going to be almost like a series. This is the adventure of the week. This is the person we're trying to save. This is the mission of the week type deal, even though it is still technically a movie that was released. A little bit of background: the pilot was aired in obviously 77, November 1977. Then 2 or 3 weeks later, the Return of the Incredible Hulk aired. And later, when the series got picked up, it was then renamed Death of a Family Parts 1 and 2, aired as 2 episodes. But this was aired as a 2-hour movie on a Sunday, shown in 2 parts. And then the next episode didn't come out till March 1978. So it was like these 2 were made, and then it was a long period of time before they had filmed and released the other one. So this is like the second pilot movie, Death of a Family, or Death in the Family, or The Return of the Incredible Hulk. We'll just call it The Return of the Incredible Hulk because I like that, because it is a return, all right. He's back, baby.
So, like you said, Jill, this one aired a few weeks later after our pilot. This one aired on November 27th, 1977, and it was still written by Kenneth Johnson, but directed by Alan J. Levi.
Nothing says Happy Thanksgiving like seeing a woman trying to poison her own child to death.
So after the events of the pilot episode, David Banner finds himself working on a ranch where he suspects something mysterious is happening to a sick girl named Julie. So we kind of start this episode feeling where we left off on at the end of the pilot episode. He's kind of leaving society. He's excusing him. Yes, he's exiling himself from society, if you will. Thank you. Taylor Swift word.
Oh, is it? I mean, it is, but like, did she coin it? No, but like, I'll
Well,
give it to her. I'll give it to her.
I think she invented it, if you ask me.
Exiled.
Um,
Okay, sure. Yep,
yeah.
yep, for sure, for sure.
Thank you, Joe. And so he's hitchhiking to, far, these like royal communities where there aren't many, people around, trying to just distance himself. That's the word I was looking for.
Mm.
And so he kind of stumbles onto a farm where he sees a girl walking on crutches. She falls over. He ends up helping her out. We kind of get a little bit into her story, like she's visiting her father's grave, who we find out that she used to go running with. So she wasn't always walking with crutches. She didn't always need them. So we're kind of like, huh, what happened to you? And then she
Mm.
ends up passing out, and he carries her back to her home where he meets kind of all these different people that work on this estate, all these different maids and housekeepers, and these men that work on the ranch, these field hands, if you will, and the woman who's taking care, woman in charge of taking care of her, the woman in charge of taking care of her, excuse me, named Margaret, and so we get to her bedroom, and they're like, oh, she needs her medicine. And they give her an injection of myostatin, I think it's called. And I
You would know
Googled what
better than
this,
me. Yeah.
I Googled what this was just because I was curious. And it turns out that myostatin is a protein that inhibits muscle growth.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, I feel like this is. Have you ever seen the movie? What is it called? Run on Hulu. It's
with Sarah Paulson.
Yes, yes. It reminds me of that, like kind
Yes.
of like a Munchausen type thing. Yeah,
Yeah. Yes, exactly. And it's
yeah. When
also
you
like
make
that
someone
other,
sick when they're not sick, or
yeah,
something like
that other TV show that came out with Joey King, where the
that.
mom is making her believe that she's sick too.
Hmm,
Oh my god, what was it called? I don't remember. Anyway, if it
I'll
comes
help
to
you
me,
out.
it comes to me. It's on
Keep talking.
Hulu. Um, so
The Act.
David, the act.
Oh, with
Yes,
Patricia
thank you.
Arquette's in that. Oh, I gotta see it.
Yeah.
That looks good.
Um, yeah, I think she won a Golden Globe or an Emmy for that performance. Anyway, so David is weirded out by this because, as we know, the audience, David is a man of science, so he kind of immediately points out the differences between what's actually being injected in her and what myostatin is. And he's like, he says to the nurse or whoever's giving her the injection, like, isn't myostatin supposed to be clear? And she just looks at him and is like, and who are you? Like, what are you talking about?
Right.
And
Which I also
so,
love because it's like I love, again, I love the scientific angle of it. Like it's actually
yeah.
getting into actual scientific conversations, and I think that's also
Hmm.
fun. Like, it's like Grey's Anatomy, like I said, like the idea
Hmm.
that he's just like, oh, isn't this that? Like I love the moment. Also, we'll get to it where he like checks out the machine and he's like, oh, I'm part of this company. Just checking out the MRI machine. Like I just love
Yeah.
the scientific angle of it, and him still being a doctor and what that aids in
Yeah.
his character, and kind of the demeanor. Because I feel like he's so calm, cool, and collected, but not in the Mark Ruffalo way where I feel like Mark Ruffalo is almost playing it a little shy and just kind of timid. Whereas he's not really
Hmm.
timid. He's very, he's not introverted necessarily, but he is still quiet and perceptive and like kind of studious in a way, which is a
Right.
little different, which I like. It's a cool take on the character.
Yeah, I agree. And so to thank David, we Julie's mother, Margaret, hires him on the ranch. She's like, oh, like, if you work for us, we'll give you a place to stay, like whatever. It's just to thank you for, saving Julie, basically. And he introduces himself as David Benton. So he's going as a different name.
Mm.
And so funny that you keep bringing up Grey's Anatomy, Dill, because I don't know if you recognize Dr. Bonifant is his name, I think.
Yes.
Dr. Bonifant is played by, I'll tell you in just a second.
Mr. Feeney from Boy Meets World. That's how I know him.
Uh, he's Mr. Feeney from Boy Meets World too?
Yeah,
Oh my
William
god, what?
Daniels. William
William
Daniels.
Daniels. Yes, and he also has a character arc on Grey's Anatomy, where he
That's right. Yeah.
is a mentor to Christina Yang while she is doing her
That's
attend
right.
her attendancy at the
Oh yeah.
I think the Mayo Clinic in Minnesota. I think that's
Yeah,
where
he's
she
in
does
Yeah,
her.
Craig
Yeah.
Thomas is his character in Grey's Anatomy.
Yes.
Yeah. He's also
Yes.
in Girl Meets World too, apparently. I didn't see that, but
Good for him. He would just like what a sweet man.
also like pushing 100 years old now, and he's still looking good. So
Wow, good for
like he's
him.
still alive and still kicking. Yeah, good guy.
Yes. So, and then we also find out between a conversation between David and Julie that Margaret is actually not her real mother. She's her stepmother.
Which
Um,
immediately I went, oop, that's a red flag. Not that like
exactly.
stepmothers are red flags, but it's like think about the stepmother in literature, right? Like Cinderella's stepmother.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's always got a negative connotation in literature and in media
Yes.
where I was like, immediately I'm like, so the medicine doesn't look the right color. It's her stepmother, not her real mother. She used to be able to run, now she doesn't. I was
Mm-hmm.
immediately like, red flag, red flag, red flag.
Something hinky's going on here.
Hinky,
So
yeah.
David pulls Margaret aside and says, like, I think that there's something wrong because the doctor ends up coming to the house and he gives her another injection of myostatin. And he's like, you're just giving this to her willy nilly. We're not even sure what that is or what it's doing for her. Like, so he pulls this Margaret aside and she says that something's wrong with her medication, like something weird's going on. And then we find out that the stepmother who confronts quote unquote the doctor, Dr. Bonifant, that this field hand that I hired is onto you. He thinks that there's something wrong here. And we kind of get this sense that she's in on it. Like they're doing this purposefully.
Conspiring. Yeah.
Exactly. They're in cahoots, if you will. And so she's like, I need to get rid of him because I don't know who he is, but he knows something's up and this is not going to go well for us. And so the other field hands, give him his severance pay and they're like, great, you're fired now. Like, thank you, leave.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay, but let me just go clear this with Margaret, make sure that she knows what's going on right now. So then they end up ganging up on him and, it's 3v1. And obviously we know that this isn't going to go well for them at all. So he, hulks out, takes them all down and breaks free.
I love the way they show this transformation too, because again, they have to try to find a way to hide it. So instead you see them push him outside and then you just hear the growl from outside the door and then you see the door bust in. I think that was just such a clever device of kind of introducing this transformation again, because they have to mask around it. I love that.
Yes.
It's like you hear it and you're like, I know exactly what's going to go down. And it's amazing.
Exactly. So he wanders into a forest where an old man kind of helps him and he kind of just takes it in stride, this like big green monster in front of him. He's like, oh, please have something to eat and have something to drink and it's going to be fine.
So you do anything for friendship, right?
Exactly. And then so he turns back into David, but apart from, we find out that this old man's name is Michael. And so he transforms back into David. He comes back to Michael's kind of like run down estate. It seems like he's kind of homeless. And then a sheriff comes along and he starts asking him questions about this green monster that's been sighted. It took down some of the field hands at the house. He wants to know if he's seen anything. And Michael, even just meeting David and this creature, he has his back and he covers for him. And he says, no, sorry, I don't know anything. And David's like, well, why'd you do that for me? And Michael's like, well, people's business is people's business. It has nothing to do with me. I'm staying out of it. And I'm like, that is a motto. Bro. I'm like, we should all be living by that. People's business is people's business. It has nothing to do with me.
Just imagine that on you get confronted by this big green monster. Big green monster goes away. Shirtless man comes back out of the blue, and you're just like, I'll cover for him. Like, there's just such a well-natured man to do that. Because I don't even know if I would. I'd be like, some fucking up is going on. There was a monster. Now there's a shirtless man who may or may not also be that monster. I don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
I forgot what I was going to say. Anyway, no worries. I literally had a thought and then it just poof, like a bubble.
I need to always
right
insert myself every now and then because you're so well prepared with all your notes. I've got it. If I have a thought, I'm going to say it.
No, please, Phil.
You've got so much already to say that you have written down to where I'm like, oh, if I can add a thought to that, I will, just because I want to make myself relevant. But please tell me if it's too much.
please, Dill, interject as much as you want, because all you have is very thoughtful and insightful and everything, and I'm just kind of regurgitating what happened.
You're insightful too, Kels, but keep going. I'll keep interrupting.
Thank you, Dill. So the B plot
So what are
is
you doing for dinner?
happening. Funny enough, I think I'm going out later because it's Lauren's mom's birthday today.
Oh,
so I think I'm going out to dinner with them because they're coming into the city tonight to see Kimberly Akimbo.
Oh, fun. Nice.
Which is fun.
I won't interject
so,
again, I promise.
Okay. So the B plot of this episode is the return of Mr.
I can't
McGee.
believe it's been raining all day. Like, that is so
Dude,
crazy.
the thunderstorms have been nuts lately in New York City.
I love how you're not even getting pissed off, because normally you'd get pissed off at me, but now you're just like, I'm just gonna roll with his joke.
I'm just saying yes and at this point.
Yeah, it's okay. Keep going, because I literally want to actually let you finish now, because
okay.
there is still football to watch.
People who are listening are probably like, can they just get on with the episode, please?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Well, we're gonna stop horsing around now. Dill, save it. You know the rule about comedy. It can only come in threes.
I will sit here and hold my Paddington in silence. Go ahead.
Good. So the B plot is the return of Mr. McGee. And he's kind of just, being Mr. McGee and trying to suss out what happened to this creature. And he's investigating and whatever. So then David goes to the hospital that Dr. Bonifant works at, just kind of suss him out. He sneaks in as, going in as a different name. Like Dill said earlier, he pretends to be working for the company that made the MRI machine. So he's like, oh, well, we're just checking in and making sure everything's going well. It seems like the people that are having their treatments with that are successful or going well. So it kind of gives him the idea later that, maybe he wants to get himself a scan. And so he sneaks into Dr. Bonifant's office and he takes Julie's file. And while he's in there, the doctor and Margaret come in and the doctor's explaining to her that, like, oh, we've doctored the x-rays so that even if an expert looks at them, like, it'll confirm the diagnosis that I've given Julie, that, whatever's happening to her legs is actually happening, and that it's not just something that we're inflicting upon her. And, so then it's pretty confirmed at this point that they're faking her illness, and they're basically setting up to make it look like this is a thing that's killing her, and that in the next 1 to 2 doses, she could end up dead.
Yeah. I'm going to interject, but it's actually going to be about the Hulk this time.
Amazing.
I will never, in a film or TV show, whenever a character sneaks into somewhere to do something where he's not supposed to be, and then the characters that are supposed to be there, you hear them coming and they have to hide, that will never not make me nervous as hell. And they do it in every film and every movie I know, but I love it every time. And I'm always like, oh shit, he's in the closet.
Yeah.
That's how I felt this whole scene. I was like, dude, get out. But I'm like, wait, he can't get out. Go in the closet. I hope they don't go in the closet. Oh my God, he's overhearing them. I love that plot device. And if I ever write or direct a movie, I will make sure a scene like that is in it. Even if it's nothing to do with the story, I will find a way for a character to be somewhere they're not supposed to be and eavesdropping and almost getting caught, but not. I love that plot device. It's always a favorite of mine.
Yeah, it's like that moment in scary movies still where, like, they're hiding and, like, the killer's right around the corner, but they have to, like, get something like their cell phone or a weapon or something, and they're reaching. You're like, don't make a noise. I totally get it.
Yeah.
So sorry, I've lost my place in my notes. Okay, so, and then we also find out that I forgot to mention this before. So Julie and her father, the way that Julie's father died was in a fire, in an explosion that we find out that was actually on a boat. And that Julie, obviously the father didn't survive, but Julie did. And Julie was pulled out by this mysterious man who we end up finding out is Michael, the man who's living in the woods. So he's just an all around, like, just good citizen, good Samaritan, if you will. And we find out that the boat explosion was actually not an accident, but also that was the first ploy that Margaret and her, like, team of field hands came up with in order to get rid of the father and her daughter, because as we find out, the father had this big multi-million-dollar company and the mother is looking to inherit all the money. And so that's our goal here. That's her motivation is to inherit these millions of dollars. And so David takes her original x-rays and the medicine, and a nurse kind of, is like, oh, there was a guy looking for you right by your office. And in that moment, David steps out of his office and she's like, oh, there he is. And then he starts running off. And so he runs.
This again aided my anxiety. I'm like, oh no, if he had just waited like 5 minutes.
No, yeah.
But of course he had to walk out just as they turned around. But again, made it exciting. And that's where they made the cliffhanger too. If you did watch it as episodes, they aired it as one big movie back in the day. But if you watch it as like episodically, which I think we both did, that's where the to be continued is with him taking off in the car, which I also thought was a fun little like cliffhanger.
And so he takes off into the car, and one of the funniest lines ever uttered, made me laugh, I had to write it down, is when the doctor and the stepmom are running after him, and the doctor goes, just to let the audience know, in case you weren't sure, he says, I think he's headed towards the house. And it's like, yeah, duh. Obviously, he's headed towards the house. You didn't have to yell. He could be headed
towards the police station or something, like, or
I don't know.
To the radio station to be like, look what I just heard.
I don't know. Maybe, but I feel like it's clear down to where his.
There are only like 3 or 4 places he could possibly be going, and one is like the very clear number 1 answer on Family Feud. Like survey says, he's probably going to the house.
So, and yes, like you said, Dill, this is where the first part of this 2-parter would end. So I'm just going to keep going into the next episode as if it's continuous, and then we'll talk about our, my thoughts specifically at the end.
We're looking at it as a movie, so this is the climax, I guess.
Yes. So then,
actually, I don't want to say that. The climax, we all know what the climax is, and it involves a bear. We'll get there.
Oh my God. Okay.
I was going to say, this cannot be the peak of the episode. What am I saying?
Right. So then David gets to Julie first, miraculously, because as we found out from the doctor, he was in fact headed towards the house.
Glad to see that cliffhanger resulted in the right questioning, pondering.
Exactly. And so David is trying to convince her, like, listen, you're in danger. They're giving you the wrong medicine. Like, we need to get you out of here. And she's like, what are you talking about? Like, you're crazy. Get out of here. She starts hitting him in the head with her water basin, which
really hard.
Really hard. And it's like really comical. And this probably looked really cool when you were watching it in the year 1977, but watching in the year 2023, it just looks so foolish. And so,
cool and foolish. How about that?
All right, fine. Best of both worlds.
I'm biased towards the series. I fucking love it. I don't care.
Listen, Dill,
bear.
I had a good time with these 2 episodes too. I had a better time watching this than I did the pilot.
This is much more a good time. Yeah, because it's still got dark elements. It's about a girl being like poisoned by her mother and doctor in order to have an inheritance. Like that's dark, but at least it kind of leans into the fun of the superhero-ness. I mean, like this literally becomes a survivalist picture where they're like three people trying to get through the woods without getting killed, like kind of like a hunt. Like that just develops into that in the next few minutes, which I think is fun. And then of course the bear. Did I mention a bear?
We're going to get to the bear, Dill. Don't worry.
I know. I just want to get there.
So he ends up hulking out because he's getting hit in the head with a silver water basin. And it's making him freak out. So he hulks out. He crushes the thing in his 2 hands. And Julie ends up, I guess, being so startled by all this that she like faints. And he picks her up and, carries her out of the house as the Hulk. They end up going off into the woods together. He changes back into David, and before he left, he stuffs the files underneath the mattress so he hides them. And she's, he again spends the next few moments trying to convince her that, like, listen, I'm trying to save you. I know that was like really scary, but these people are trying to kill you. Mm-hmm. And so Margaret basically sends all of her field hands and everyone off on a wild goose chase to go and find them. David takes Julie to Michael, where Julie is able to put 2 and 2 together. Obviously, we know this as the audience, but this is the first time Julie recognizes that it was actually Michael who saved her in the boat explosion. So she's like, oh my God, like, you're my hero, whatever. And I just wrote down Mr. McGee is doing things because we randomly cut back to him every now and again. And okay, so then Michael agrees to be David and Julie's guide throughout the woods because he's like, you're leaving too many footprints. I was able to follow you, up until this point. Like, you have to go down this way to make sure that you like lose all the people that are trying to catch you. And they're like, oh, like, please help us. And he's like, okay, fine. So then they venture off into a river, and Julie says, I think something's got my foot. And Michael's just like, it's probably a leech. And then a bear pops out from under the water and starts fighting David. Michael and Julie are able to make it to the other side of the river.
Which, first
And
off, didn't know bears. I knew bears could swim, but I didn't realize they like lurked under the
went
water
under. Yeah.
until a person came in to pop out of it, like an alligator or a crocodile. I think that's a
Right.
really cool enhancement for bears everywhere. I think that's a really cool skill that I just learned. And if I
I
ever
think,
transform into a bear, like my favorite childhood classic Brother Bear, I will take
yeah.
that into account.
Dill, I think this show might be giving bears too much credit. I actually don't know if they know how to like hold their breath underwater.
Yeah, I mean,
But
if yeah, I'm just
now,
gonna hold on.
okay, now the Paddington makes sense. I didn't connect the two
No,
at
I was gonna
first.
reenact the fight between my Hulk and
Okay.
my bear, but I figured, why pit two of my favorite things against one another?
Yeah, no.
I'll be honest, this fight kind of made my whole life and day. So I
Yeah.
think this is the peak of like camp superhero television of the 70s.
Yeah.
In a series that I've up until now been like, wow, this is like really dark and like kind of sad and grim, which I really appreciate. Here I was like, okay, this is the fun. And this is where I want to talk about Lou Ferrigno, because Lou Ferrigno,
Yeah.
if anyone doesn't know, was not an actor. They
What
approached
was
Arnold
he?
Schwarzenegger. He was a
Oh,
bodybuilder wrestler, and they
I
approached
see.
Arnold Schwarzenegger saying, "Hey, do you want to play the Hulk?" And he goes, "No." He said, "I cannot do it. I am too busy filming Conan the Barbarian. I cannot do it." So they were like, "Okay,
Okay.
well, what are we gonna do?" And he goes, "Here's my friend Lou Ferrigno, who was his rival, his like wrestling rival." He was like,
Hmm.
"Lou can do it," because he thought it would be humiliating to have Lou Ferrigno do it. He was like, "Ha ha ha! This loser's gonna have to play the Hulk." And then Lou Ferrigno was like, "Sure." Lou Ferrigno, by the way, is deaf, in case anyone didn't know, which is also why I've always resonated with the Hulk, because I have hearing loss in one ear. Lou Ferrigno was someone I always looked up to as like this guy who played a superhero and was deaf. He was like 90% deaf, so like he has implants, so like he can kind of hear, but like what a perfect role for a guy who does nothing but build mass on his muscles and cannot hear and can only really kind of grunt because he had a speech impediment because he was deaf and was bullied as a
Hmm.
kid, to where he was mute half his life because he was too afraid to speak as a kid because he got bullied. How awesome that he could just grow up and punch the shit out of people, like pretty much kick ass out of the people who bullied David Banner, and just growl and be a badass and be this hulking presence. I love Lou Ferrigno, and I'm so glad he got his break here, because he never really went on to do anything else. He actually was a voice consultant in the MCU Hulk, so he like kind of provided some help with the voices for that, for the
Hmm.
actual Hulk in the MCU. So he is also technically an MCU actor as well. But I just think it's really cool. Like he got his big break because he's just like a big guy that they needed to play the Hulk, and they said, "Hey, he doesn't need to say any lines. Like, let's have Lou Ferrigno do it." And I think he's great. I think he's such a fun presence as a Hulk. But this bear fight is amazing. It was a real bear, just so people are clear.
Wait. Pause. Because still, I wrote
Pause.
down. I literally was like,
Did you
maybe
say
I'm dumb.
pause? Look at the screen. Sorry, you said
Oh,
pause, and I needed to make the bear joke.
sorry.
Continue.
Sorry. Pause.
Continue.
Yes, like
Yeah,
pause.
yeah, yeah.
Rar.
Yes,
Bear.
continue.
Got it.
Is this a surprising fact that you're finding out that is real?
Well, because I didn't know and I didn't want to sound dumb. I literally wrote down in my notes, I said, maybe I'm dumb as fuck, but that bear looks real.
It is real. So there's a fake bear for one shot, and I bet you can guess what it is.
Okay. I literally wrote, that bear looks real, except when he eats it.
So Lou Ferrigno literally threw a pretty big mannequin. Like, that is still a big ass mannequin to throw. The bear, it looks like a
Okay.
constellation in the sky. It is in
Because
full,
it was like,
yeah.
yeah. I'm just thinking about, I'm sorry. I'm just thinking about the bear.
The bear getting yeeted is one of the
Flying off
best
into the
images
sky.
ever. If you have a minute, literally just a minute, download. This is $1 on Apple. Buy the second part of an episode for $1. It's watch the whole thing because it's good, but the second half, watch it for the bear fight alone. You can probably find the bear fight on YouTube. You don't even need to spend $1, but spend $1 so you can get it in HD.
Yeah.
He fights a bear. First of all, like there's a bear on set. Now, granted, I don't think Bill Bixby actually fought a bear. I think it was a stunt double. And then Lou Ferrigno did fight a bear. Lou Ferrigno was his own stunt double because why would you have a pro wrestler play the Hulk and then like not have him be his own stunt double? And you can see the best part of this fight is that he is obviously wearing makeup. And there's green makeup getting smeared onto the bear.
All over the bear.
If you look closely on the close-ups, like watch back that scene, the bear, every time it takes a strike, it gets like green makeup all over its arms. And then he yeets it, throws it, and that's the fake bear that you see in the sky, like a constellation. And then he lands, the bear just shakes it off and walks away. Like nothing happens. Like a giant bear just got thrown to his potential death, got up like nothing happened, and just went, I'm going to shake it off and go tell my pals about this exciting adventure. Like he just went off to like just go hang out with his friends afterwards. Like just strolls off as if nothing happened. It is the defining moment of my childhood, and I didn't even experience it as a child, but like I want to believe that it has always just been spiritually with me, this scene.
Dill, this is because I'm watching this scene and I'm thinking, okay, well, some shots have to be like a guy in a suit, right? And then, but then they're fighting, like the bear and the Hulk are fighting, and the bear is like opening his mouth and like trying to bite him, and I'm like, that didn't look like puppetry to me.
It was probably like one of those like Hollywood bears. I don't know if there's a lot of them, but like one of those Hollywood bears where it's
trained.
Like, I don't think
it's a trained bear.
I don't think that it was like one of those like neorealist things where they went into the forest to be like, let's find a bear and let's fight it.
No,
like,
I think it was definitely a trained bear.
Yes, but
to like not be a bear.
It is a wild animal.
It's a bear. It's a bear.
You have Lou Ferrigno, who is deaf, beating up a bear.
Yeah.
And yeeting it in the sky. The best part, though, is when the bear just shakes it off and walks away. I think it's the funniest thing ever because it's so, like, okay, I'm back to reality.
The bear does live. Like, no bears were harmed in the making of this
And we don't
episode.
want to see bears harmed in the making, but boy, was that fun. That sequence.
Boy, was that fun. Indeed.
I wish it was airing now so I could tell everyone to go watch it. I'm still going to tell everyone to go watch it, but like I wish it was still like on TV so I could be like, you missed out a great episode last night. Guess what happened? Lou Ferrigno fought a bear.
Oh my God, I cried and now my notes are I was crying from laughing and now my notes are smeared. Okay.
This is going to be on the TikTok. This is going to make the TikTok, this clip.
Thank God. So now we go after the bear. It's now post bear. So there was pre-bear. There was PB.
And J.
No, there was pre-bear. Now we're in post bear.
Pre-bear. Ew. That just sounds weird.
Pre-bear?
Yeah.
Okay, fine. Before the bear. I'm just trying to be like BC, like before Christ or whatever BC.
Before
BB,
bear.
Before bear, and like now after bear.
Pre-bear sounds like a procedure. Like
pre-bear.
I'm going through pre-bear before my operation.
Right. Get him prepped for pre-bear.
Yeah, I don't know.
I've been my Grey's Anatomy era. Anyway,
this show is just so Grey's to me. Like the whole like we're gonna steal the file.
It's very Grey's coded for sure.
Yeah. I like to believe Grey's Anatomy was based off of this series.
Yeah,
probably. Who was based on the bear though? Burke.
I was thinking like Karev.
Karev is the bear. Yeah, that makes sense.
Karev is the bear because you can tame the bear.
Yeah, but then the bear's just gonna leave you for their ex and just write you a note.
Yeah, let's not even talk about that.
Let's not even get into that. That is so disappointing.
That's another podcast for another time.
I would love a podcast about Grey's with you, Kels. When travesty finally ends.
Name the time and the place, Dill. We can go through. We can have our No, I'm rewatching to catch up. I got up to the COVID episodes and then I fell off. I know Meredith leaves.
Speaking of, really quickly.
Yeah.
how many times are they going to borrow this whole plot beat of like, we're going to go to heaven, we're going to talk to the people we love who died, and they're going to tell us it's time to come with us, but not right now. You're going to go back to Earth. We saw it with Grey's Anatomy. We saw it with Guardians of the Galaxy with Rocket. We saw it with Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows with Dumbledore. And now they just did it in Blue Beetle. I just went and saw Blue Beetle, and they did the same exact thing.
I saw Blue Beetle.
Did you like Blue Beetle?
I did.
That was okay. But like, why would they recycle that? Like, get a new plot beat. Fuck.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, anyway.
I'm just so fed up.
So now we get to, speaking of beetles, we're talking about a different insect, rodent, reptile. That's what I was looking for.
A bug because we get reptiles.
I know, but I was trying to get there. Anyway, it wasn't a very good it wasn't a good segue. Mm-hmm. But we get to our new obstacle, which is Michael getting bit by a snake, which is hilarious. Yeah. It's hilarious how the snake latches onto him.
I love how it's after the bear. So it's like you just fought a bear, and now how can we up the stakes from a bear? Oh, let's get a snake bite. Like it's just never going to live up to it. They should have had the snake bite happen first.
Right.
Yeah, but I like the bear should.
The bear should have been the buildup. The bear should have been the grand finale. Because these two other events that happened post-bear, not as exciting.
Yeah, no. But I will say it's very interesting now, though. You have a plot device where like this man can Hulk out at any second and is is responsible for this girl who believes she cannot walk, and this guy who literally cannot walk because he just got bit by a fucking snake. Like it's some situational comedy like no other. I'll be honest.
Right. So now he got bit by a snake. He needs help because, venom and a snake bite.
I just saw the mascot for the Colts just hump the goalpost. Sorry, I need to close this laptop. I have it playing on the side, and the Colts just literally humped the goalpost after they scored a touchdown. All right. Sorry, the coffee.
Anyway, so what were we talking about? Snake bites. So now Julie is like, "Oh, David, like you're a scientist. Help Michael with his snake bite," but he can't help because he's the big dumb fucking caveman Hulk. So he's like, I don't know what you're saying, and he's just kind of standing there useless. So now Julie has to like take over, and Michael's like, "Oh, I just need a tourniquet and like a band-aid and like whatever, and then I'll be, but you have to leave me behind. I'm dead weight now. You go." And so David goes back to normal. They leave Michael behind, and he hides in the river. He does one of those classic movie moments where he has the reed coming out of his mouth, and he's hiding under the water. I always wanted to try that as a kid, but I was too afraid because I just feel like they do.
You can do it as an adult.
Well, I'm still too afraid.
Okay.
Moving on. So basically, this whole episode is one big chase sequence, and luckily, when it was released, it was one big episode, but one of my complaints about this was I was like, this all could have been one big thing. It did not have to be divided in two parts, because if they just had cut down a little bit of the fat from this chase sequence, it could have been easily tacked on to the end of the first part of this all. Anyway, so then our third obstacle of the day that we have to deal with is that Julie and David get stuck in quicksand, and David's able to escort her out of the quicksand. He pushes her out so she's safe, but now he needs help. He needs a branch. He needs Julie to get a branch so that he can grab onto it and pull himself out. And he, she's like, I can't do it. I can't use my legs. They're broken. I can't use my legs. I haven't used my legs in years, whatever. So then finally he hulks out in the quicksand because his stress just skyrockets. So now he's, has more weight to him than ever. And finally she gets her shit together and she stands up to get a branch, and he ends up picking her up as the Hulk. He does this nice little Hulk leap where he just jumps really high and then lands wherever else. And then, oh, by the way, they also had a helicopter following them the whole time. Yes. And he throws something at the helicopter to destroy it. And so now Julie can walk. It's a goddamn miracle. She's using her legs for the first time ever. And she's like, listen, they can't find you like this. So you need to go and hide and transform back into your regular self, because if they find you like this, it's going to be a problem. Yeah. And so she kind of shoos him in a way, like you might a stray dog that you can't take care of anymore. Kind of
Oh,
like that scene in Air Bud where he like throws the basketball and is like, I don't want you anymore. Like, go,
yeah,
get
yeah,
on.
yeah.
You know what I mean? It just reminded me of that. And so then Julia walks off. She's like, here, give me the medicine. I'll take the evidence and I'll take it to the police or wherever. And she just walks off into the forest, leaving the Hulk behind. We cut to seemingly days later, I'm assuming, back to the hospital. And David puts himself in that radiology machine from the beginning because he wants to run like the
Yeah.
the treatment on himself to see
It's
if
a
it'll
fun
help him.
little detail. Earlier, he asked, "Oh, do you guys run it all the time?" They're like, "No, we don't run it at midnight, so we can conserve the energy." And it comes
Right.
back to play because he's gonna sneak in there past midnight. He's gonna use it. I knew
Yes.
that was gonna happen.
Good eye tuck, as they would say in the Wonder Pets. Have you ever watched that?
The one is that the one with Ming Ming, the duck?
Yeah, Linny Tuck and Ming Ming too. And then Tuck is always points something out that's blatantly obvious, and then Ming Ming goes, "Good eye, Tuck."
I didn't know that, but yes, I've heard of the show.
That's just one of those weird like references like from a kid that you have like an inside joke with your family.
Oh yeah,
Because the Wonder Pets were post really our like
our prime.
childhood. I only watched it because I had two younger cousins that watched all the
I got you.
time.
You don't
And
need
so
to. You don't need to make excuses. I get it.
okay. This
It's okay.
podcast.
I sing the "Better Bake a Cake" song from Lazy Town every time I bake. So
Oh, you know what I
just
sing
kidding.
whenever I bake? It was a Dora the Explorer episode where they were making chocolate and they said "Bate, bate, chocolate, mix your
You just
chocolate,
unlocked a core
chocolate."
memory there. Yep.
Right? That was the best episode, was with the chocolate. And because they had like the cocoa beans. Oh my
Yeah.
God. Anyway,
It's good.
love that episode.
Gotta
And
love it.
this podcast is unhinged.
I love
think
it
we're
though. This is so fun.
I agree.
I'm having a blast.
I
mean,
think
we
we're
both have
yeah,
nothing to do today, so we're just like, I'm watching football, I'm
I'm
talking
relaxing.
Hulk, I'm drinking
Exactly.
my coffee that's already gone. I love it.
And so we find out at the hospital that Julie has gone to the police. They've taken the doctor and her stepmother in custody. And she's like, "Oh, David, like, come live with us. Like, we'll keep you safe. Like, we'll protect you, whatever." And he's like, "Listen, like, people can't find out who I am and what I am because the Hulk is wanted for murder. And that's not a murder that I can prove or disprove that I didn't commit."
Yeah.
So,
Because that's another element is he forgets everything he did as the Hulk, which I think is a
right.
very interesting. Is that what it's like in the MCU too? I can't remember. Does he like forget what happened when he was the Hulk? I don't think so.
Yeah, I think so because
Yeah.
every time he like becomes Hulk again, remember it's like the scene in Avengers 2 where he's like, "Hey, like what was the damage?" And then
Gotcha.
and
Yeah.
then and then Thor is like, "Oh, they're
Yeah.
in hell. The screams are filled with all
Yeah.
of the people."
But like
you
in
killed.
Ragnarok though, he's like, I feel like he's conscious about it. He speaks.
Well, yeah, because he's been Hulk for so long in Ragnarok
Oh,
that I
okay.
think
Gotcha.
he kind of develops. It's kind of like he just adapts to being the Hulk. So I think the Hulk
So we
like
might
gets
see that
smarter.
in this too. We might see that in this too.
Maybe. And so he decides that it's best for him to go off on his own. Mr. McGee shows up. He tries to interview Julie, but Julie's just been like, "I've been through so much. I really don't want to talk to you right now." And this scene, Dill, was so jarring to watch because we're in the hallway of the hospital. David has already left at this point, and Mr. McGee comes up and he's like, "Hey, I want to ask you some questions about what happened." And she's like, "Oh, I don't know. We'll talk in this other room." And then when they cut to them being in the other room, it is so clear that this scene was shot on 2 different days because her hair goes from being like this, like really sleek, like, like kind of really shiny, kind of like straight waves to just being a mess of curls in literally the next frame.
I didn't
And I was
even
like,
realize.
guys, it was so jarring. I was like, this is a mess. And then and basically, yeah, the episode ends.
Yeah.
And
But a
that's
little bit of an impromptu ending as well, like that we saw with
Yeah.
Spider-Man. But I mean, it happens. I mean, there's only so much. I think they only had 90 minutes because that's how much airtime they had. But yeah, 2 movies. It sounds like you like the latter one better, right? Is that what I'm
Yes.
gathering? Okay, I
Well,
like them both. I think the latter one was
yeah.
more fun to watch. I think the first one is just like, I think a better show, a better movie, just because of like the emotional depth. But like, I'm a big fan of both. It's been no secret. I think this is like some of the best like what the best of what you could do in the 70s, I think, with this premise and this character. And I just thought it was very interesting, especially because we really haven't gotten a really good Hulk thing yet. And I think like She-Hulk is different because it's a different character. Also think it's funny that She-Hulk kind of borrows the whole car thing in the beginning. That was clearly an homage to this. You know, with the whole car flipping over, and that's how she got the gamma. It's a different thing, but like,
Right.
you know, kind of the similar imagery. But yeah, like I thought it was very interesting, but like, this is still probably my favorite iteration of the Hulk, I think, so far, at least.
Interesting. Yeah, I think that's
I mean, there's really not a lot to compare to. It's the
right.
Edward Norton, it's the Ang Lee version, which we'll cover at some point. I mean, there's not a
Right.
lot of good Hulk stuff out there, but
It's hard to compare them because this one just goes into so much more depth that it's a little unfair because, you know, we meet, you know, Mark Ruffalo's version of the Hulk, which is supposed to be a continuation of Edward Norton's, and we still, you know, we never got like a Hulk movie in the MCU, so we don't really have a lot to go off there.
And like they're teasing that there might be another one now that he's going off to the car, but I don't even know if we're gonna get that because of the strikes and stuff. What?
I just said we didn't get a Hulk movie in the MCU, and we 100% did. The Incredible Hulk exists, but it's just a different version.
I thought you meant like since Mark Ruffalo took over the casting, we haven't gotten a solo of his yet.
Yes, sure. We'll go with that. That's what I meant.
That's what I thought you meant.
I didn't just completely ignore the existence of an entire movie released in 2008.
It's
fine.
That you're gonna get a ton of questions about in this trivia match.
Okay, now, hey now.
I dropped Paddington on the floor and now he's dusty because I need to dust under my desk. I'm so sad. I did the whole yeet thing with my.
Don't yeet your Paddington. He deserves better than that. But I will say, Dill, strangely enough, is that these two episodes, the Death in the Family episodes,
these two movies, they're movies.
These two movies reminded me, you know, they kind of had this really dark storyline of this young woman getting poisoned by her family, and it kind of really reminded me in a weird way of like what's his name? A Daredevil episode. And I thought that if tonally we kind of went to this like the darker side and took on the grittiness that Daredevil does, I think that honestly it would have landed better, and it would have been, you know, because that was my only issue, is that tonally and kind of the way it's shot and the things that happen like don't really match, don't always like align what's going on in the actual plot, because the plot itself is dark. And and I think that just like tonally as a whole, it could have gone more in a specific direction rather than just being like a superhero show with a dark plot. Whereas like, you know, Daredevil really like takes on that darkness and that grittiness that we love. And I think that was my biggest complaint with the plot, and with the pilot, and with these two other movies, or like this one whole movie.
One other movie,
it got better because it was a better plot, but I think that the thing that's missing here is the direction and tonality.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I love critic Kelsey. I love it. I will tell you though, it's funny that you said that. So the next time we see the whole, it's going to be a while, because they make a whole series about it. It lasts 5 seasons and it ends in 1982. But then in 1988, 89, and 90, they resurrect the character for 3 reunion movies. So basically 6 years after the series ends, they bring him back for 3 more movies. The Incredible Hulk Returns, The Trial of the Incredible Hulk, and The Death of the Incredible Hulk. I guess that's a spoiler alert. But the Trial of the Incredible Hulk, who do you think his lawyer is, Kels?
Matt Murdock?
It is. You know it.
Wow.
So you will see Daredevil in the Hulk movies later.
Wow, I didn't even know that.
And do you want to know who the crime syndicate they're fighting against is?
Just give me 1 second. Is it in the Daredevil show?
It's not a queen, but a
Kingpin.
Yeah, that's right. So there you go. You're gonna see Kingpin and Daredevil in the universe here. And do you want to know who you're gonna see in the Incredible Hulk Returns? Someone you saw Hulk with in one of their movies.
Betty Ross.
No, think about like Hulk in the MCU being in someone else's movie.
Oh, She-Hulk. Oh,
No.
um, 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 Iron Man. Oh, Thor.
Thor is going to be in the Incredible Hulk return. So we're going to see some
Wait,
other
that's
MCU
crazy.
faces in these movies, which is going to be interesting. But we will hold off on those for a little while because there's a lot of movies in between that we have to get to. Some plenty more Spider-Man movies. There's a Doctor Strange movie in there. We're going to get back to them in the First Avenger Files soon. But we're going to take a week off the next few weeks, and then we'll be back with the First Avenger Files soon. But Kelsey, I've been loving this whole experiment, this whole First Avengers Files. I've been loving doing it. I will ask, do you have scores for these two movies, for the Incredible Hulk and the Return of the Incredible Hulk?
So for the pilot, I gave it a 4.5 out of 10. And then for Death in the Family, I'll give it a 6 out of 10.
Okay. I am at I'm at an 8
Okay.
for the pilot, and I'm at a 7 for the next one. Just because I think the first one, like, there's a lot of emotional richness and nuance. I just thought it was so, like, it just took me by surprise. I was like, this is so much darker and unexpected that I just really got a kick out. I not got a kick out of it. That's the worst word to use for this. I was definitely surprised by it. We'll say that. Then the second one was just like the bear fight is such a blast, but like, is it a little too much of them just running through the woods? Maybe.
Yeah.
And does the build up take, like, I like it from when he's in the hospital trying to steal her file to the bear fight. That whole like 20-30 minutes is really amazing, but stuff before and stuff after, I'm like, okay. But yeah, all in all though, really, really solid. But next week we're taking a break from the First Avenger Files because we're going to go back to the present day MCU, because as Kelsey and I said earlier, we didn't realize there was an MCU series dropping this week. Kelsey, so what are we covering next week?
We are covering I Am Groot. Sorry, I was like, what is it called? Just my favorite character.
Yep,
and the only words he can say.
Well, not true. Not true.
I
Not
am
true
Groot.
anymore.
Okay. Well, no, because that was him just saying I am Groot, but we can
but,
understand him because
Vin
we're a part
Diesel
of
had
the
to say the
family
words.
now.
Okay, whatever. All right.
Anyway,
that's a trivia question Jay Burns will argue in the future.
please.
I told him, I was like, we're never gonna make that a question because of obvious reasons, but because there are gonna be people who say, but that was a translation, So.
That's gonna be a polarizing question, I'm sure. So let's just leave it at that.
Yeah. And then exciting stuff coming in the Marvel universe trivia wise. Kelsey, you have a match this month. Are you excited?
Yeah, I'm excited. I've never done a regular match, so I'm excited to not.
No betting round.
Yeah, exactly. I'm excited to just have the 3 rounds, but I'm also incredibly nervous because the last time I studied was for the match for the belt match with Stacy, and that's the last time I really sat down and watched
testing
anything.
it out unstudied. Like, this is going to be your first test of like how you do just without studying.
I guess this is when I say I'm going to study, I'm going to probably just review my flashcards that I've made in the past.
But you're not going to watch anything.
But I don't know if I'm going to I don't think I'm going to have time to rewatch anything. So I think this is probably JD's match to win. So.
All right, well, we'll see. I mean, those secret invasion questions, those will be fun. All right.
Oh,
so
secret invasion. Okay.
Hey, listen, we're not going to just like make it like all secret invasion. Like,
you're right.
Happen. You're probably going to get like 2 or 3. That's it.
Okay. Sounds good.
But you never know.
Exactly.
It's already written. And so it's really just up to whether or not you land on the wheel or not.
Cool.
But I'm Dylan. You can find me at Dylan_Randazzo Twitter. Obviously, I'm Dylan. Why did I say that? Dylan Randazzo 417 at TikTok, or the Dill Pickle Movie Network on TikTok. That is a TikTok thing now too. And of course, YouTube. If you want to go check us out on YouTube, if you're listening on podcasts, thank you. Check us out on YouTube and vice versa. Kelsey, where can they find you?
You can find me on Instagram at Kelsey A. Kilpatrick, or you can follow me on TikTok at Cause13.
Hell yeah. So we'll be back with a shorter episode next week of I Am Groot. Obviously, this actually ran as long as the episodes we talked about today. So that's going to be fun. But next time it'll be short, probably only like 30-40 minutes. But hey, we need a short one because we're both busy this weekend or this upcoming week. So thank you guys so much for watching, and we will see you next time.